Hello and welcome to our channel. In this video, we will discuss about the lungs, which are considered as respiratory organs. So the topics which we will cover in this video are: what is the anatomical position of the lungs in the human body? What are the lung structures, that is apex, base, lobes, surfaces, borders? Next, what is bronchial tree? What is the vasculature of the lungs? That is, what are the arteries and the veins which supplies to the lungs? And at last we will discuss about the nerve supply, that is, what are the nerves which supplies to the lungs? So these are the main topics which we will cover in this video. So let's start our today's video, that is the lungs, which are considered as a respiratory organs. So as we all know that the lungs are the center of the respiratory system in the human body, that is the right lung and the left lung. In every cell of the body needs oxygen to stay alive and healthy. Our body also need to get rid of carbon dioxide, and this gas is a waste product that is made by the cells during their normal and everyday functions. Our lungs are specially designed to exchange these gases every time we breathe in and out. And the main functions of the lungs is to oxygenate blood. They achieve this by bringing inspired air into close contact with the oxygen-poor blood in the pulmonary capillaries. Now, what is the anatomical location of the lungs in the human body? So, let's talk about it. So, the lungs lie either side of the mediastinum within the thoracic cavity, and each lung is surrounded by a pleural cavity which is formed by the visceral and the parietal pleura. And they are suspended from the mediastinum by the collection of structures entering and leaving the lungs. So this was all about the anatomical location and the position of the lung. Now next, what are the lung structures? So there are various lung structures. So let's talk about them. So as we all know that the lungs are roughly cone-shaped with an apex, base, 3 surfaces and 3 borders. And the left lung is slightly smaller than the right because this is due to the presence of the heart. And each lung consists of the following structures. So let's talk about them. The first structure is apex. So as you can see here on the screen, we have provided a picture of the lungs, that is the right lung and the left lung. So on the left side here, as you can see, this is the apex. So apex is a blunt superior end of the lung which projects upwards and above the level of the first rib and into the floor of the neck. Now second structure is base. So as you can see here on the screen, this is the base of the lung, which is the inferior surface of the lung and which sits on the diaphragm. Now the lobes. Lungs basically have 2 or 3 lobes. Right lung has 3 lobes and left lung has 2 lobes. So look at the screen. On the right side of the lung, on the right lung, we have 3 lobes. This one is the right upper lobe, this one is the right middle lobe, and this one is the right lower lobe. So these are the 3 lobes of the right lung. Now let's talk about the left lung. So left lung mainly have 2 lobes, that is left upper lobe and the left lower lobe. And these are separated by the fissures within the lungs. So, and left lung has only one fissure. So look at the screen. That is on the right lung, we have 2 fissures. This one is a horizontal fissure and this one is an oblique fissure. And on the left side of the lung, we have only one fissure, that is an oblique fissure. So this was all about the fissures and the lobes. In brief, first of all, we'll talk about the oblique fissure. So oblique fissure runs from the inferior border of the lungs in a superior posterior direction until it meets the posterior lung border. Now the horizontal fissure Horizontal fissure runs horizontally from the sternum at the level of the fourth rib to meet the next structure, that is the surfaces and the borders. So lungs basically have three surfaces and three borders. So let's talk about them. So first of all, we'll talk about the surfaces of the lungs. So as you can see here on the screen, we have provided a picture of the left lung, their anterior view and their posterior view. So basically lungs have three surfaces: mediastinal surface, diaphragmatic surface and costal surface. So look at the screen. This is a costal surface. This one is a mediastinal surface, and this one is a diaphragmatic surface. Now one by one we will talk about them. So first of all, let's talk about the mediastinal surface. So the mediastinal surface of the lung faces the lateral aspect of the middle mediastinum, the lung hilum, where structures enters and leave the lung, and is located on this surface. Now the second surface of the lung, that is a diaphragmatic surface. So the base of the lung is formed by the diaphragmatic surface and it rests on the dome of the diaphragm, and it has a concave shape. This concavity is deeper in the right lung due to the higher position of the right dome overlying the liver. Now the third surface, that is a costal surface. So costal surface is smooth and convex. It faces the internal surface of the chest wall, and it is related to the costal pleura, which separates it from the ribs and the innermost intercostal muscles. So this was all about the three surfaces of the lungs, that is mediastinal surface, diaphragmatic surface and the costal surface. Now next we will discuss about the three borders of the. So look at the screen. Basically we have three borders: anterior border, this one, inferior border, this one, and posterior border, this one. Now let's talk about them in brief, how they are formed. So first of all, we'll talk about the anterior border. So anterior border of the lung is formed by the convergence of the mediastinal and the costal surfaces. On the left lung, the anterior border is marked by a deep notch, which is created by the apex of the heart, and it is also known as a cardiac notch. You can see here, this one is a cardiac notch. Now second, inferior border. So let's talk about that. So inferior border separate the base of the lung from the costal and the mediastinal surfaces. Now the third border of the lung, that is a posterior border, this one. So posterior border is smooth and rounded in contrast to the anterior and the inferior borders, which are sharp. This is a marked feature here, and it is formed by the costal and the mediastinal surfaces meeting posteriorly. So this was all about the three borders of the lung, that is we have talked about anterior border, inferior border and posterior border. I hope these lung structures are very much clear to you guys. Now next we'll talk about the bronchial tree. So the bronchial tree is a series of the passages that supplies air to the alveoli of the lungs. It begins with the trachea, which divides into the left and right bronchus. You can see here, right and the left bronchus. And each bronchus enters through the root of the lung and passes through the hilum. Inside the lung, they divide to form lobar bronchi. And each lobar bronchus then further divided into several territories, that is segmental bronchi. Each segmental bronchus provides air to the bronchopulmonary segments, and these bronchopulmonary segments are the structural and the functional unit of the lungs. Very important. Now what happens? These segmental bronchus give rise to many conducting bronchioles, which eventually leads into terminal bronchioles, and each terminal bronchioles give off respiratory bronchioles, which feature thin wall outpocketing that extends from their lumens, and these are the alveoli, the site of the gaseous exchange. So this was all about the bronchial tree. Now next we'll talk about the vasculature of the lung, that were the arteries and the veins which supplies to the lungs. So let's talk about the vasculature now. So the lungs are supplied with deoxygenated blood by the paired pulmonary arteries. As you can see here on the screen, these are the pulmonary arteries. And once the blood has received oxygenation, it leaves the lungs via 4 pulmonary veins, 2 for each lungs. And these are the pulmonary veins. You can see here on the screen. And the bronchi, lung root, visceral pleura, and supporting lung tissues require an extra nutritive blood supply, which is delivered by the bronchial arteries, which rises from the descending aorta, and the bronchial veins provide venous drainage. The right bronchial vein drains into azygous vein, while the left drains into the accessory hemiazygous vein. So this was all about the vasculature of the lung. Now next we'll talk about the nerve supply to the lungs. So let's talk about it. So the nerves of the lungs are derived from the pulmonary plexus. They features sympathetic, parasympathetic, and visceral efferent fibers. First of all, we'll talk about the parasympathetic fibers. So, they are derived from the vagus nerve. They stimulate secretions from the bronchial glands, contraction of the bronchial smooth muscles, and vasodilation of the pulmonary vessels. Second, sympathetic. The sympathetic trunk, and they stimulate relaxation of the bronchial smooth muscles and vasoconstriction of the pulmonary vessels. Third, visceral efferent, which conduct pain impulses to the sensory ganglions of the vagus nerves. So this was all about the nerve supply to the lungs. So in this video we have discussed about the lungs, which are considered as respiratory organs, and they are meant for breathing, for the gaseous exchange, for converted deoxygenated blood into oxygenated blood. And we have discussed about the anatomical position of the lungs. We have discussed about the lung structures, that is apex, base, hilum, root, 3 surfaces, 3 borders, and fissures of the lungs. And then we have discussed about the bronchial tree. Then we have discussed about the vasculature of the lung. And at last we have discussed about the nerve supply to the lungs. So that's all. That's all for today. See you guys in our next video. Till then, stay connected with us for more videos like this. Don't forget to subscribe and comment below. And press the bell icon for more updates. Don't forget to meditate and exercise daily at least for 3 hours. And yes, thanks for watching our video.